All right, I'm here with Dr. Jordan Shallow, and we are continuing on with Fix Broken Atom. So I've had these issues with pronating in my foot. I met with Jordan probably, I think it was almost 6 months ago. He gave me all kinds of things that have helped me out, made a huge improvement. Now I'm working my way on strengthening all these issues, or not strengthening the issues that I have, that I've fixed the issues. Now I'm strengthening my squat. And I was just sharing with him that I had eliminated my barbell back squat, and I've been seeing huge gains from adding Bulgarian squats into my routine. And of course, like always, he's always got to school me on more knowledge. And so I wanted to share with you guys some of the information that he was giving me. So I've been doing your pretty much traditional Bulgarian squats. I either hold on to a pair of dumbbells or I'm doing barbell Bulgarians. And I want to show the viewers first what I'm talking about, and then whatever you have to add,
Sure.
I'll appreciate.
Yeah,
So when I do the Bulgarians, if I'm using a dumbbell, I think one of the biggest mistakes I've seen when people do a Bulgarian is they step out sometimes too far to where they feel like some of the trail leg is doing just as much, if not more, of the work.
Yeah.
And I'm working more, and correct me if I'm wrong, I'm really trying to stabilize that lead foot, and I want to get that strength in all my stabilizers when I get down to the bottom of this Bulgarian. So I don't want a lot of stress back here. In fact, I want to be able to almost balance right on that front leg. And I come all the way down, just like if I was to do a single leg squat, that back trail leg is relaxed. I'm focusing on all this control here. Now, what's common is as I want to push up, my knee is going to want to collapse in. And I know that that's part of the problem with me pronating is that. So I need to be, the intent, as I come out of this, I need to be pushing out, right? So that was something that I learned from you when we went over our walking lunge and focusing on opening the hips. So I've now brought that into my Bulgarian. So when I get down in this position, I'm already thinking about pushing the knee out as I drive up, stabilize the top, come all the way down, keeping that knee from wanting to collapse in. And I get 5 to 10 on one side, then I switch the other. Now, you are telling me that I should add some more to this.
Yeah, so right now the dumbbells are almost a wash in the stability standpoint, right? We're adding resistance to the quads and hamstrings, traps, upper back, whatever. But if this drill is to get you more stable for your squat, like if you want to get stronger at Bulgarian split squats, then by all means look at a progressive overload of resistance. But I feel like the carryover from top end strength of your squatting to your Bulgarian is going to be 1-to-1. You get stronger in squats or Bulgarians, you'll be able to the strength will be there from the prime movers, because we're looking at what, 10 pounds in hand.
Yeah.
You can go 3-4 wheels without breaking a sweat. So the strength is there. If we're using this as an accessory movement to improve on a weakness in our squat, especially a weakness that is sort of rearing its head as this pronating, losing that knee position from a hip stability standpoint, if the drill is meant to prompt stability, then we're not going to load resistance. That's why we have squatting for. We're going to load a stimulus of instability. So we're going to do that. We're gonna get rid of that one. Okay. So now we're just gonna load. Now for you especially, I mean, everything works, nothing works every time, right? And that's the problem with some of these drills. But for you, what I want you to think is we're gonna load the hand of the lead leg.
Okay.
Because now we're gonna prompt instability through that. We're hypothesizing that glute is a little bit maybe not inactive or able to stabilize under the heavier weights. So now I want you to do hip, knees, and ankles all in a straight line. We're gonna draw that knee out. Now this works two ways. We're gonna load that glute more in a stability roll, but we're also gonna use that opposite QL, that muscle that stabilizes the lumbar spine. So we're here, we're loaded, we're using that glute to laterally stabilize the pelvis, but also we're using that opposite side to QL to laterally stabilize the lumbar spine.
Because we're off, because
exactly.
we only have one dumbbell here.
Yeah, so we're prompting instability by using load. And we're so tied into adding resistance to movements that now there's a 1-to-1 ratio of the more weight we put in that hand, the more your center of gravity is going to deviate, the more you need to stabilize, resist movement in order to go through that pattern. So for you, with this particular pattern that we're trying to fix, we're going to load that hand that's going to oppose the lateral movement through the QL of the lumbar spine and then through the pelvis on the stance leg.
Of course, every time I get you in here, it makes total sense when you break it down, but I do want to make sure that the listeners understand what you just explained to me, which makes perfect sense. The main reason why I stopped the barbell back squat was because I really wanted to work on my pelvic control, the pronating of my foot, and strengthen that, where it's not about how strong of a Bulgarian squat I get, like you said. If I can strengthen that, I'm already squatting 300-400 pounds on the barbell. My goal was not to do Bulgarian so I could technically see an increase on that.
Exactly.
I want to fix something that's broken in me.
Yeah.
And so, yeah, holding the dumbbells, that's fine, that's great. But if I really want to put emphasis on what I'm trying to fix, doing a what's the word I'm looking for? Not a single loaded.
Like a unilateral load stability drill.
Unilateral loaded stability move is far better than me. So it'd be better for me to take a light dumbbell, challenge even more of my stability in that movement than it would be for me to progress to 90-pound dumbbells.
Because 90 pounds in each hand is how much?
180
pounds, right? And
Which
it's
we know
like,
I can do more.
yeah, exactly. So we've loaded that quad under a higher threshold strength stimulus before, with the quad, hamstring, the whole hip complex. But injuries happen. I mean, you're not going to hurt yourself doing this, right? Because your skeleton, your muscle, your system can handle 400 plus pounds. So we're loading sub-threshold to that, we're fine. What's going to end up happening is when our strength outruns our stability, when you can squat 5 wheels, but you can't, hinge down with one dumbbell and then stay stable on one leg. Like if you can't stand on one leg, you shouldn't be squatting with 2.
Right.
That's sort of like a rule of thumb, because every single injury you get, no one's ever too stable, and that's why they got hurt, right? They focus just on the objective progress of increasing strength, weight on a bar, and they lose that subjective feel of stability and motor control just through all planes of movement, and then that's when you're gonna get hurt. When that weight becomes too heavy and our stability can't match it, then we're going to run into irreparable problems. So this is a good gatekeeper exercise as far as...
And I'll be the first to admit that this is I love to chase the PRs. I love to see my squat continue to go up, but then you become so focused on that. And I'll tell you what, the first day, and it's been over a month now that I've been doing the Bulgarians, my routine, just my body weight, I was all over the place. I mean, I was having a hard time balancing. And that was a huge red flag for me right away, that I knew that, wow, I've really neglected doing some of my stabilization type movements. So that being said, I've now been doing it consistently. I've seen good progress, challenging it. That I'm going to add that into my routine now. Now, when you prescribe or you tell someone to train like this into their normal routine, how do you normally tell them to intermittently include this? Like, obviously, it doesn't replace a barbell back squat.
No, I mean, I'll use this. So dynamic stability is something that needs to be called upon whenever we're bilaterally loading, because it becomes less apparent of our instabilities, right? So I'll make sure that this movement is dialed into some capacity pre-major lift to sort of call on that stability before we need it. Like you were talking off air about how you did a full workout of Bulgarians and then you went in and loaded 2 wheels and then the bars never felt lighter on your back. Well, I mean, it could feel even lighter if the quads and hamstrings weren't fatigued by loading it. So I'll take 1 day a week and load this in a progression. It's still objective progress as far as like looking to increase weight, but my graduation process to more weight is very subjective. It has to feel better. Right. I've put more weight on a bar. No, right? It's moved from A to B. I got the job done, but it did not feel better.
That's a great point to make right there, because we can get caught up in that saying, oh, I was doing this much, now I'm doing that much.
Exactly.
When you're doing something like this, the intent is completely different.
Yeah.
Like, I'm not trying to do this till I can say that I can do this with 100-pound or 200-pound dumbbells. Who gives a shit about that? What I'm trying to do is improve upon what I've got a problem with right now.
Exactly.
Where doing the barbell squat and increasing your weight, totally different. So you would say intermittently within the routine, even before?
This is part of every one of my squat warm-ups.
Oh, it is?
Without a doubt, yeah.
Oh, wow.
Again, it's, it's one of the gatekeeper exercises. It's if I know that I can get back, go down to that Bulgarian split, dismount off the medium, have the kettlebell and dumbbell in my hand, and fully just be in control of that hip in all movements of space as I like shift that center of gravity, I'm good. Is that the case? Usually not. But it's something I test and retest every single time I squat to avoid injury. I mean, it's an underlying theme in rehab exercises that I program for people, that I prescribe, is that trying to ingrain that idea of subjective progress. We want you to feel better. We don't want other people in the gym to see you move more weight, right? Because it's when strength outruns stability, that's when you're gonna get hurt. So sort of taking the onus on of internalizing what this is supposed to feel like, establishing like a baseline gradient, and then making sure that we're always sort of checking that mark every time we load. So this is, you can go and you can static stretch, you can do a warm up, but if that dynamic stability component is the key before you go into heavy loads.
Now, is there a fine line of not like overdoing it before I go into a squat? Because
yeah, I mean, I think it just needs to be subjective, right? A weight you can handle without fatiguing the quads and hamstrings before you go and load the strength aspect. It just has to be dialed in, fluid movement, and just getting those repetitions in to the point where the technique and that stability is ingrained, but not to the point where we've done so many of those repetitions to ingrain the technique that we're now starting to introduce fatigue to the muscles that we're trying to strengthen.
so I think and I'm throwing numbers out there because of course there's going to be individual variance,
Sure.
right, based off what you're saying. 2 or 3 sets, 5 to 8 reps on each side of just real control.
And the thing is, do it cyclically. Do it in conjunction with the barbell movement. So go in, do your stretches. So this is how we program. Is we're gonna sort of change the perception of that joint end range of motion with static stretching, self-myofascial release. Then we're gonna move into that next step of dynamic stability, and then we're gonna load. Then we're gonna do it all again, right? You're not gonna get stronger in a set. You're not gonna get bigger in a set. You're not gonna get more stable in one set either. So going through that as we go through that ascending, because again, our objective goal is there. It's not here. Right, so when I include this into the warm-ups we prescribe, it's more so chasing the real objective outcome. Is how does this stability transfer over to how I'm feeling on the squat? So that as we improve on the end ranges of motion in our static stretching, as we improve on the dynamic stability, we hope that has a carryover into the perception of strength. And
so you're actually doing this in between each round?
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
I mean, I'll take this usually 3 to 5, depending on how I'm feeling. Again, this is where the subjective comes in. 3 to 5 of my ascending warm-up sets. So it's not warm-up workout. No, one just lends way to the other, right? So I'll go empty bar. So I'll do some static stretching. I'll do some dynamic stability, load an empty bar. Back through again. Load, 95, 135, 185, 225, all the way up. And then when I start to approach my working weights and I feel confident, I feel stable, I feel like I'm getting into good, strong positions, then I do away with the latter half of the warm-up, the stretching and the dynamic stability, and now I'm working out. But it's not this binary black and white, I'm warming up, now I'm going to lift weights. It's the integration of all this. And
God, I'm glad you said that. I'm glad you said that because I think a lot of people do that. We separate the warm-up part of it, and then it's really tough to actually see how that's carrying over into that. Where you can see each round, I bet you can see a significant improvement every time.
And the key there is, this distillation process. Like, again, I do this to get better at lifting, right? So I'm to the point now where I can use these gatekeeper exercises and gauge the number of sets, gauge the number of reps, but also gauge which exercise to implement because I know I've isolated them as variables, and then I could plug in one day like, oh, you know what? Hip feels a little off. I'm going to introduce this static stretch, this dynamic stability drill, then I'm going to load. And it's like, or something, my back feels off, okay, different static stretch. So if you control for the variables and you sort of feel how that transfers over every single time you do it, then you'll know when you internalize that feeling, then it's like, okay, we can take an inventory every time we come into the gym. And now we can be like, okay, we can self-assess, we can do some of our gatekeeper movements, and then we can program and tailor our correctives for each day, not just, your back could hurt one day, you could sleep on the floor, you could be on a plane. So you got to have a lot of tools in the tool belt that you can draw from based off how you're feeling.
Right. Now, I know this is a little bit different direction because we started off this video with fixed broken atom.
Yeah.
And that's what the intent of this movement is today. But what are your thoughts on like Bulgarian squats just as a strength and a muscle builder?
Sure. Yeah. Again, it's a good isolation exercise that's low threshold on the joints, relatively speaking, from a stimulus standpoint, right? Like if our knees can hold up to 400 or 500 pounds, you're not going to be getting half of that, right? With one on the ground. The requisite stability has to be there because when we lose stability, we don't have the structure there to call on. Things can go bad pretty fast, but make sure the stability and strength are progressing equally, and then by all means, it's unilateral work has been shown in research to prompt.
Well, I know some sports coaches are actually they don't do any of the bilateral squatting; they're only doing that. So.
Yeah, I've heard of that. I'm biased to squatting, but I think squatting is a movement pattern, right? And it's like, if anything, this is more functional from a human being standpoint, right? Like the gait cycle. The squat may be less so, right? So I can get on board with it, But personally, for my own training, squatting is going to stay in. But as a progressive overload for hypertrophy or strength, I think it's a great
Right. I feel like we could argue it either way.
Absolutely,
right?
yeah.
Right. Listen, if this video helps out, make sure you guys like, subscribe, and share. Also, this guy's got a ton more information over on his YouTube channel. Click the link up in the top right-hand corner to check it out.